world is that?
That's my trapper keeper.
That's the oldest
Oh,
thing I've ever heard.
only important people have trapper keepers.
Yeah, yeah, I got a trapper keeper.
What's
Like, no joke. Little kid me would be super jacked that I had a trapper keeper, and I have basically what amounts to a supercomputer inside of it, my iPad, and then I have a watch where I can call people on it like Dick Tracy.
That is awesome.
Trapper keepers were not even a thing when I was in school.
Yeah, that's because you're a baby. So
We don't need to talk about that.
yeah. So are we gonna do this? We're gonna have our podcast because we got a special guest that you may have already heard.
Yes, absolutely.
So
We're very excited to have him on.
But let's not spoil it. Let's just wait a second and we'll introduce him.
Absolutely.
All right.
Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be.
What's up, party people? We are coming to you from what basically feels like the ambient temperature of Hoff, Appleton, Wisconsin. Man, it is cold outside.
It's much warmer here than it was in the deer stand this morning.
Yeah,
So
Aaron was
think
out.
about that.
Aaron was out slaying deer like a real man. It's hot.
My brother got one.
Did you didn't get one?
No, my brother and my dad, but that's all
Did
right.
you just jump out of trees, kill things with your bare hands?
Essentially, there's like Assassin's Creed in there.
All right, well, let's do our intros. All right, so with me is the man whose dance style is more electric boogaloo than West Side Story. The man who provides all the fashion tips to Flava Flav, Aaron Rohde.
Absolutely.
And me, James Dorn, of course. Aaron, who's our guest?
We have, coming from Hillsboro, Oregon, we have Armando Cardoso in the house today.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Fresh off an auction as well.
Yeah, he's out slinging records like stuff
man.
do.
That was improv. That was tough today. Everything went down. Everything went wrong. But keeping it positive, jumping on the cell phone, impromptu, selling some records. And Aaron, I just have to say one thing. You actually pronounced my name better than I could pronounce it. That was awesome.
Right.
But we wanted to have you here because, like, hey, we talk about you constantly, like
Just about every episode.
just about every episode, because we think your group is pretty spectacular and you do some pretty amazing things. So I don't know that we can do it justice. So what do you want to tell us about your group, man?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge like a follower of you guys. You guys are huge supporters. You guys are how you guys do things or view things with like records and music is epitomizes what our group is all about. Our group.
That's code for me paying for part of Armando's mortgage.
There you go.
Probably.
which I appreciate, by the way. Yeah. So yeah, just really, really glad. I know that you've talked about Second Chance Records Group in general for I think almost every single episode.
Yeah, I think you got us a little excited. You got us like really into the vinyl community. And then when we got going, we were like, hey, we want this to be a positive thing. So a lot of your core values got brought into the show.
The positivity and the inclusivity, I think, are huge for both your group and for our show. So I think that feeds well off of each other.
Well, the cool thing about, social media could be used for so many things. Obviously, oftentimes people view it as a negative thing or like as an addiction, or it is what it is. You could also turn those negative things into a positive thing, right? Especially like when you own like I am a business. My name is Vintage Mio, but it's one of the core businesses or also amongst other hobbyists that are in the group as like sellers selling records in the group that form Second Chance Records Group. But there's this mentality behind, hey, it's actually a blessing where folks we could use a social media platform where people could see us. And it's not necessarily like when we're selling records and it's like lip service, something like you could talk to a salesman over the phone. You actually are inside our homes, our businesses, and you get to see our expressions, everything. It's almost like you guys are part of our family, and you're seeing us sell records live.
And in some cases, we get to actually be really good friends, like you and I.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love you guys. Aaron, I don't talk to so much, which I think Aaron should step up his game and talk to me because I'm pretty cool.
He is pretty cool.
I, yeah, that's probably my fault.
No. But yeah, man, it's just what Second Chance Records is about isn't necessarily it's not a business. It's just a core. It's just like a name or a group where little LLCs, hobbies could get together and sell some records. But it's based on principles, based on principles of, hey, um, there are certain types of folks out there in this industry, and you've probably seen them. We've had these conversations many times.
I think that's how you and I met, actually, was you saw me getting into what turned out to be a big all-out cluster of an entire Facebook page of vinyl people, and they were all just getting bully and turning on each other. And eventually I was like, I just left the group, and you messaged me shortly after that and basically said like, hey, I like the way you handled it. Let me show you this video. And it was a video of you that was on the news.
Oh yeah, well there you go. See, in my mind, social media is a reflection of how you see your life. And so whatever you post on social media, it's like, hey, this is a reflection of my life. So we try to keep it positive. Granted, not everything is perfect, but you know what? If you post positive things, and maybe karma, we believe in karma, and maybe positive things will happen in your life. Well, when it comes to music and there are some record snobs out there, and I pride myself in knowing less than some of those uh, collectors that have been doing this for decades, or people who know the music because they experienced it. What I am, and I pride myself is I don't know as much as some folks out there, but I will be a firm foundation for those folks that are just beginning and could see me as a possible, not necessarily like a role model, but someone who's doing it, but not just puffing out his chest or so and saying, "Hey, I know it all. Let's learn together. Let's learn different artists. Let's share the music. Let's share our experience and our positive things." Adds a couple of donations here and there, and
Yeah,
realistically,
you've donated to all kinds of people, like children's hospitals, domestic abuse shelters. Like, you've done a lot of good work, and I know you're not always one to talk about yourself in that way, but you've done some good stuff.
And I've got to
well,
say, as somebody who experienced the children's hospital environment, I had a lot of, chronic health issues as a kid. So I really appreciate when you send money to places like that as well.
the
That,
theory
that means a
behind
lot
that is
to me.
you're welcome, Aaron. And hearing that makes me feel like I even want to do this more. Because when we talk about this thing, it's a vinyl community. Well, how does a community look like? Is it just a one-way deal where, hey, we've got a whole bunch of members that, of course, they care about us, and they're spending money and stuff. Well, let's take some of their funds and let's prove it that if it's our community, let's donate back into their communities with, like you said, women's shelters, foster care programs, cancer treatment. Let's take care of, at least do something, and take care of people that can't help themselves. And so it's mind blowing to me that these things, which I call records and music, that have the ability to bring people together, and these pieces of things that are godsend, that they help us in our lives, and we have a passion for it, like music could do really good things. So
It really is the
awesome.
universal language.
It's all about the mindset too. It's the way
Yeah.
you look at things.
Yeah, and I've seen it too. Like, there's been many occasions where people have come to the group for advice on, say, turntables or things that they don't understand about collecting. Say, let's make it something simple, not necessarily this, but why do we have two different speeds, or more than two different speeds of records, and what's better, and that kind of stuff. And nobody ever feels bad about asking those questions in the group. People just love to teach.
You do. And so oftentimes, I do, because I'm an admin, like that's an admin title, and I'm able to do certain things on the page, but I am a co-contributor. And so I monitor like certain comments, and I make sure that there's no bullying and things like that, because you're right. People, one word that we consistently hear in our group from customers is that we feel safe. There was one individual, for example, let me give you a story. She's like
We love stories.
well, she's 4'7", and she is she or he, or sorry about that, I probably gave it away, is a good customer of ours, but she's like a cheerleader in our group. And she mentioned one day that she went to a swap meet and she was being pushed around by like maybe folks that were like 6 foot or 5'11". She was struggling just to get records at the swap meet. And she said it's a completely different feel, that when she shops into our group, she feels safe here. And that's what we try to create.
Oh yeah, when I went to that record convention that Aaron missed, oh my God, when that door opened to general admission, I was elbow to elbow with people, and I'm 5'9", like, mid 200s. I'm like, I'm not a little guy, but I felt claustrophobic. And there was a lot of that type of stuff that you're talking about, like, oh, that's not an original pressing, that's not as good. I already have that. Just people showboating, talking about why their collection's better, just general snobbery. And it's not the sellers, it was the people shopping. And I was like, bro, in my head, I'm like, bro, nobody cares how many records you got at home. We're here fighting the music that we like.
Right.
Nobody's impressed.
Cool. Yeah, but you're right. We take care of each other in the group, and that's the whole goal and the intent.
So I got to ask you, we don't need to go into what your previous profession was, but it was very different than what you're doing now. So how did you come to have a pretty darn successful Facebook group of individual sellers?
Well, my background is doing, we'll just say like compliance group for a financial institution, and a lot of that deals with like anti-fraud type stuff, protecting folks from like elderly abuse, or just making sure that we're protecting the financial industry, by making sure that
It's probably natural for you to try to protect people not in the group.
well, it's a sensitive deal. It really is a sensitive deal, for me, because of course you don't want good people or any individuals being taken advantage of. So when folks are losing their inheritance by scammers or things like that, or by people that just don't have like the right mindset in this life or just don't get it, it's really difficult. But yeah, what had happened originally when we started the group is I was doing pretty well, I was doing pretty well financially. They thought I had prostate cancer, and for in my line of work, I was like a top trainer for some of these things, for this financial industry. I started getting sick, and they thought I had prostate cancer, and I made a decision with my wife just to take like a year off. And we weren't expecting COVID to hit, and 1 week later, they completely closed down Oregon. So before, probably about a month or two before, I started this group. I was already selling in a bigger group with some records. They found out that I had about 30 or 40,000 records at the time, and it was paying some bills. It was paying some bills, and so I just figured we'll just do this temporarily, in February of 2020 or January 2020. But now it is almost 2022, and we're still doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, you are, and you're doing it pretty spectacularly. Who was there with you day one when the group launched?
There's a lot of customers that were there from day one, but there's one individual in particular. There's two people actually. He's my core. His name is Gary Michaelis. Gary Michaelis is my 74 or 75-year young hero.
Gary is a beautiful man.
We love Gary. Absolutely.
So if you want to sit down and you want to talk about one thing that makes this group different than people, or other groups, I mean, it's Gary.
He's the most amazing man ever, the most successful role model that I've ever seen, not necessarily monetary wise, but this man is the most loyal person that I've ever seen in my life. That when he retired, he was scared that he wouldn't like retirement, but here he is with me because he loves me, and I love him. We are literally getting into Volkswagen bugs as a hobby, and he's busting out these Volkswagen bug windows and helping me restore these things and busting down engines together.
So more importantly, Gary's your best friend, but he is
He is.
also your business partner in a sense, where he helps you do all the packaging and helps you run the auctions when you're live, and helps you just keep track of things.
Absolutely. And the number two person is more entertainment value is Denny. Denny is what, 74, 75 years young, and he's a musician. And he was there in my very first auction. He had the opportunity of, when he was serving in Germany, I think it was in '66, where he had an opportunity of singing with John Prine one night from like 8 p.m. all the way till the next morning in Germany. And so he's just a really good man.
Yes, and those
He's
guys.
awesome, and he's full of stories too.
Oh, he's just very
It's
charming.
always awesome when he's on.
Absolutely, and he's a great guitarist. He's very creative. So, what's the most interesting thing that you learned about people during your we'll say vinyl trip around the world?
Oh man. Well, I would consider myself a spiritual person. I am a believer, whatnot. I'm just not a fanatic by no means. We love all people. We love all genuine folks. But when with COVID, that really opened up people's mind to a lot of things. There was a lot of stuff that people were struggling with. It doesn't matter what industry or what your background was. It doesn't matter what it is. But I realized, you probably remember that early time period where everyone was freaking out about the toilet paper.
Yes.
I still laugh about it, right?
Yeah, I just didn't see the connection, but whatever.
Okay. In my mind, I've learned that there are two types of folks in this world. There are two types of people. There are one person, the people that collect the toilet paper to hoard it. And there's the other type of person that they collect the toilet paper to give it away. And I say that openly with all folks, because the concept that I learned about that, about like really good, genuine folks out there through vinyl records. Vinyl records, oftentimes, they're a thing. It could be a business. It could expose greed. It could also expose really good things in people's nature and humanity. And I've realized that selling records, I've been exposed to the top shelf multimillionaire collectors to the bottom shelf, but certain personality traits are the same. And when you mix them in with things, it's just like a mixture of all these different, combinations and different personalities. And I've learned, with good examples, bad examples, not to get too attached to these things, and make sure that I'm always focused on doing the right things with my business model, and certain principles. Because it's really simple to get attached to items, or to be greedy, or to not be your word with like certain types of goals.
That's really awesome. I think that's a cool way to kind of describe people too.
And it breaks them down to like a core group.
So
Yeah.
The other thing we've talked about a couple times is you are alone on a deserted island. You can bring 5 albums with you. Which ones do you bring?
Oh my
God!
God.
If Armando actually prepared for this show or not.
Oh, wait a second.
There are no wrong answers here.
No wrong answer. No judge.
That is a very difficult question.
It's inspired by the movie High Fidelity. I asked Aaron this on one of our early episodes. I think I asked 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't remember all of the records, but I will say this, and I mentioned this. These are the types of questions that I ask on the page, James. Number 1, Achtung Baby, I think by probably butchering it, by U2, has always, it's my all-time number 1 record in general.
That's a good album. It's actually on my to-buy list.
Every single record in there has, in my mind, emotion, but it's upbeat. And it helped me through, I believe it was like high school. Number 2 is Live Throwing Copper. I'm not sure, I don't know too much about that band, but I remember that album specifically. Every song, every track on that record was truly amazing.
I remember you selling that a few times on the auction.
Tracy Chapman's like self-titled album with like, what is it, Fast Cars on it,
Yeah.
is one of my top records, is because I remember I believe in minimalism and only have with what you use, which is weird. I have like 30 or 40,000 records, but I use them.
You
Um,
have that on your wall too. I believe that's a common one where everyone tries to buy off your wall.
oh yeah. Um, but I got rid of a 25 to $30,000 debt getting rid of a Toyota Tacoma truck, and I replaced it with the Volkswagen Bug. It was a 1969 VW Bug. His name was Remy. And I remember playing Tracy Chapman on the back roads of Oregon, listening to that album. Number four has to deal with probably the staple. Was it the staple? Oh my gosh,
Stable Singer?
Staple Singers? Yep. And there's a song. I haven't been able to find this album again, but I heard this as everyone was going through like COVID. I didn't have a job at the time besides this, and there was a song on there that talked about why you treat me so bad. And thinking about that, it talks about these singers or individuals going through like civil rights movement, I think in the 60s or the 70s, and because certain people were judged differently because of the color of their skin. The reason why that song is so important to me, I probably get emotional now, is because my grandparents migrated here from Mexico. And in my mind, I always thought that that racism was like a black and white thing, when in reality it wasn't. A lot of folks that don't realize that in the older days, Hispanic folks weren't able to use the public restrooms. And I love my grandparents so much, but to think that she was treated in that form kind of hurts a little bit. So whenever I hear that song or like that album, when I experienced it, it's one of the top impactful songs ever. So I can't do five, but that is four.
We'll take
I'll
it.
take it.
Just a side note, they recently packaged, I want to say it's 5 Stable Singers albums together in a set. And if that's something you are interested in for your personal collection, I want to say they were on sale on Amazon. It was like a 5-pack for, I want to say like $90 or something like that. If you search Stable Singers, you might be able to find that particular album that you're looking for in a set. So last question I want to ask you, like directed at you, and we hope you will stay around and be involved in the rest of the show. What are you listening to right now?
I'm listening to you guys.
There's no band you're feeling, no artist you're into?
No, no, not really. What I will be, I'll give you this, is I picked up a lot that was 900 records, and a lot of them were like Pink Floyd and
Those are
crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, those are quick.
And also like the Beastie Boys, Canadian Press, near mint type records.
I need some more Beastie Boys.
I could always use some Beastie Boys.
I mean, the 6 or 7 I have, that's not enough either.
Right. Oh, but I found my fifth one, hands down, Depeche Mode, Violator.
Wow.
So,
I can say I don't think I've ever actually, the other ones you've mentioned I've listened to, that one I've never listened
I
to.
don't think I have either.
I mean, we think of Depeche Mode and, we think of a very narrow section of their career. So may have to check that out. So one of the next things we generally do on the show there, Armando, is we do some news. Have you been following the Astroworld tragedy?
no. Please tell me about it.
So, well, have you heard of the rapper Travis Scott?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, he's from the Houston area.
Houston area. So apparently, he was having a show at, is it a festival?
Yep, it was a 2-day festival down in Houston. I think this was 2 weekends ago now. And, things got out of hand like they tend to do at some of these festivals.
Everyone started rushing the stage to the point where it became a mass tragedy situation where copious amounts of people were rushed to the hospital. And then one of the things we were going to mention here is 9-year-old Ezra Blount became the 9th victim of that. So that's a total of, at the time of when I did the research, which was this week, 10 people have lost their lives. There's hundreds of lawsuits being filed against Travis Scott. And then interestingly enough, his albums have seen a sharp increase. So how much would you say it is the artist's responsibility for safety at a concert? We're talking like a mosh pit kind of situation.
Well, in my worldview, and similarly, even how we do things, is that you always protect yourself from like reputational risk. So again, like the bigger that you are, I think that just the bigger risk that you take on. So you have to prepare with your risk, not branching out, but kind of branching in. You think of all the negative possibilities out there and you prepare the best that you can. So I would say, yeah, it's a significant responsibility.
I would agree with that. Aaron here actually is a Travis Scott fan.
So less so now, but I have one of his albums, and on the first song, one of the lyrics that stands out is, "It ain't a mosh pit unless there's injuries." And I think that, tied with what happened at this festival, are going to come back to bite him pretty hard.
He's going to hear those words in court, I have a feeling.
Yeah. And
wow. See, I'm learning as we speak. That's why I listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, I don't think things are going to go very well for him in the short term.
Yeah, I think he's going to probably lose his butt a little bit, and I think he's going to take a hit in his career. I admittedly have never listened to the guy, so like I don't know him.
It's also worth mentioning that he did cancel the second day of shows after this happened, but people felt like he should have stopped immediately and said, "We're not going forward with this." The thing that also bugs me is, as a concert goer, I'm a big sports guy too. Any event I go to, I want to know that I'm going to be safe, especially now in the world of COVID with 100,000 people around.
Like we talked about in the last
of issues that could come and get you.
We talked about in the last episode with Kiss's guitar tech of 20 years dying from COVID and reports of them having lax safety protocols at their concert and what that meant for fans. I do agree this tends to kind of come into that same area. I don't think the man should lose his career over it necessarily, but I do think he should be held accountable in some ways for that.
Absolutely.
So ABBA has achieved their highest charting album in the Billboard 200. Voyage debuted at number 2, so that's exciting for ABBA.
I admittedly have not listened to it.
It sounded
I
big.
did see it at the store, and I thought about picking up a copy. But
did you listen to it at all, Armando?
No.
Nope. I didn't listen to it either.
My experience with ABBA is when I picked up the first like 10 or 15,000 LPs about 3 or 4 years ago, I sold a whole bunch of them like dirt cheap. Had no idea who ABBA was, right?
Probably a lot of ABBA gold.
Yeah, and now I can't find ABBAs. So working with distributors behind the scenes and ordering things, I think I had the opportunity of ordering a couple, if I remember correctly. But now I don't think it's available. So
there's a couple at our local store. So side question, did you end up getting any copies of Adele's album?
No. And the reason for it is because when I started working with distributors, man, it wasn't too long ago. Whenever something was out of print, you could get something fairly new within maybe 3 months. I've been waiting for certain titles for 8 months to a year. Like, for example, Motley Crue, right? Can't get one. It's crazy. And it's because probably there's folks like Adele who have a so what do you call it? Like not an agenda, but
a stranglehold.
Like, yeah, for all her records coming out. So I probably will not ever order
Adele, and I think Taylor Swift is another culprit of that too.
Yes.
All of her re-recordings.
And then of course the vinyl shortage. But I'm going to say this right now: I am squarely blaming Adele for there not being a vinyl version of An Evening with Silk Sonic.
Oh man. I think she's a phenomenal singer. In fact, you know what's crazy about us too is we have the mindset in our group is if you can't sing as good as some of these artists, don't criticize them, right?
No,
so
Adele has. I love her. I love Adele. I'm just mad about.
He's just pissed off that she did the James Bond song for this movie.
No, I thought Adele did great. It was Billie Eilish that I wasn't a fan.
Adele is one of the songs that Kevin Baker, he's one of our sellers. and his young daughter, I think she was 16 or 17 at the time. Her name is Eden or Edith, Eden, and they covered a song on our page while we were doing like a fundraiser, and she sang, in my opinion, one of her songs better than Adele did.
That's awesome.
I don't recall that, like seeing that post, but I don't. If you say it, I take it as the gospel truth.
I am going to tag you on it and just check it out.
I will. I will. Yeah. And Kevin,
Kevin's an awesome singer too. I love listening to him.
Kevin's just an all-around good guy. And then while we're also talking about
that
it,
accent, it doesn't get much better than that.
It's
that
smooth.
Accent.
His accent is smooth. I will say we also love Joshua Noblet.
Absolutely.
We talk about Joshua Noblet a lot. I think he's probably one of the hidden gems of the group, where I think that he doesn't get enough people in his auction for the good, really good deals he gives.
It's okay. It makes it easier for us to do so.
All right. So this next one, I'm actually a little excited to have you on for this next news bit, because this artist that I'm going to mention, you have sold an awful lot of copies of. So those
usually with the preface of "Get this out of my house."
All right.
Are you talking about the Oak Ridge Boys, or what are you talking about?
No, not the Oak Ridge Boys. It's Wham.
Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson.
Wham. No, it's not Wham. Brian Werner, better known as Marilyn Manson, has been under investigation by Rolling Stone for 9 months. On 11/13, they published a 9,500-word investigation into sexual, physical, and psychological abuse. 3 accusers spoke with the magazine, including Game of Thrones star Esmeralda Bianco. They have also filed civil lawsuits. The LA Sheriff's Department has opened up a domestic violence investigation in February. He is accused of being someone who conditions women with dark humor, flattery, before an introduction of abuse, including whipping, carving his initials into their skin, forced confinement, and I would later find out it was in glass cases, and rape. Some accusers claimed he plied them with drugs and alcohol. Others claim in the article that his abuses started before his fame back in the 1990s, recording women without their consent, decades of rape jokes, liberal use of the N-word, a deep Nazi fixation, physical, verbal abuse of employees and bandmates. And then lastly, before we open this up to conversation, I want to say this is a very abbreviated version of the content that I found. It was numerous pages of stuff with very specific examples that I couldn't include due to time.
Do you want my take on this?
Yeah, I do.
Get it out of my house. What's really interesting is when you say, I'm very specific with like words, right?
Yeah.
In my background, I worked hand in hand oftentimes with law enforcement. Not to
right, and I don't want to sound like we're throwing shade on you, because you obviously know about all this stuff. So I'm not blaming you or saying you're a jerk or anything like that. I just want to get your take on it.
Yeah, I think it's a horrible thing. But again, I'm not exactly sure. I haven't, with all the amount of records that we sell, I found wind about this after I had ordered a lot of these records.
Right. You had heard about this stuff previously?
No, like it was probably like 3 or 4 months ago, something like that. And so what's interesting though is that when you word these things, they're not being investigated by Rolling Stones. Anything like that is always hand in hand with like law enforcement. And whenever you hear something, it's already a couple of months behind the scenes, a couple of months behind of what actually is already being investigated or has been investigated. I'm not even sure, has he already been tried and found guilty of some of these things?
So from what I read about this was the Sheriff's Department has been investigating him since February, after these women filed their lawsuits with them. I think they're actually also suing the Sheriff's Department. Gotcha. Which probably, the wording was tricky on it, which probably triggered the investigation. And something like that with someone such high level, I don't imagine that that's going to be something that's going to be wrapped up quickly. So I'm assuming it's probably going to be a lengthy investigation. This article was triggered by the recent release of Rolling Stone publishing their investigation on it. So I'm completely with you. There is a possibility that some of this may not be true, some of it may be behind the times. I agree with you on that, but that's an awful lot of like stuff being said about him.
Oh yeah, pretty sensitive with stuff like that. Yeah, that's just an on the spot kind of question. Yeah, we probably wouldn't sell like stuff like that or like purposely sell stuff like that. But again, this is why we also need some of our viewers to let us know what's going on current, like in the news. Um, it's unfortunate some of these artists, it doesn't matter what time period, have oftentimes had negative news, like in their past. Some of these people have been convicted. Maybe some of these rappers, not necessarily like rappers,
Yeah.
but it could be any type of artist out there. Like one of my favorite artists was like Mystical, right? And then he ended up doing something like really horrible. Or who's the other guy who just got convicted? R. Kelly.
Yeah, R. Kelly. Yeah, we did a big thing
Horrible.
about that and talking about whether his music should be pulled off. So let's let me throw that at you. Let's say this investigation closes on Maryland and they find everything's true and he goes to prison. What should they do with his music?
I have no idea. I guess I'll leave that up to them. It's sad because a lot of these folks are good artists. You can't deny that they're good artists, but because
Oh,
of
right. Maryland's incredibly popular.
Yeah, and there's no
They're-
denying that he's, not talented, not creative. He just might not be the best person in the world, the best role model for young people.
but their personal lives is really horrible. So now that I know a little bit more about that, yeah, I probably won't be selling that or reordering his records.
Yeah, no, and I want to be very clear to our understanding. He hasn't been convicted of any of this stuff, so I don't want to sound as though we're slandering him. However, there's some very compelling information, and I myself would kind of tend to be in the same group with you, Armando, where I'm like, this isn't a guy that I was probably going to buy a lot of his music, but I definitely wouldn't buy it while this is going on because I don't want to support that. I want women to be treated fairly and appropriately. I want anybody to be, not just women, but men as well. And that's not okay.
Agreed.
All right. So next thing we're going to move on to is our reviews. So when I first found the record that I gave Aaron for the last episode, I actually sent it to you, and just to get your reaction from it.
Probably had the same reaction I had. It's Christmas at Luke's Sex Shop.
That makes me feel warm inside, like it's the holidays.
I got to know where you found it.
Wait. What record is this again?
I sent you the link to it on Spotify. It was Christmas at Luke's Sex Shop.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a Two Live Crew guy, right?
Yeah.
Right? So Aaron asked me, he goes, where did you find this? So I'm going to address that quick, and then we'll let Aaron get into his
promo copy too, isn't it?
It is a promo. It's a white label promo copy because you're my boy.
Yeah.
So I Googled bad Christmas albums lists, and then there were kind of two different directions to go with it. There was either poor quality or poor taste. And it was like stuff like William Hung's Christmas and like really awful stuff. And then I saw that one, and then I found it on Spotify, and I'm like, this is actually really good, and I'm gonna get this for Aaron.
It's almost as good as Afro Man's Cold 45 Christmas.
You down Afro Man there about?
Oh man, I find Aaron's taste really interesting.
Yeah,
like
that's
like
kind
the
of
hip hop, and you like the OG stuff. OG hip hop.
It's a little eclectic at times, that's for sure.
All right. Lay your review on us.
So, Christmas at Luke's Sex Shop. Right away, you get the '90s hip hop vibe, and it sounds like a Two Live Crew album. So that was awesome. The second song, Two Live Christmas, is a hip hop take on the Night Before Christmas story, and the only way I can describe it is simply amazing. It's offensive, funny, and groovy all at the same time. It's a high mashup of all the Christmas songs into one, and it doesn't get much better than that. I actually told my fiance this is what we're going to listen to on Saturday when we put the Christmas tree up, so that'll be fun. The next song is a Christmas freestyle, which is interesting. Is a little too long, was very creative, had good rhythm and flow. The Christmas Time Mega Mix was a fantastic end to this album. It's a straight up early 90s DJ just showing off his skills, and it ends by cutting out, and it just screams Merry Christmas. So it was really fun. This is an album I never would have bought for myself, just based solely on the cover because it was just way out there.
Yeah, it was super offensive. It was like Luke dressed in Christmas thing with a bunch of black women that were scantily clad, all climbing on him.
I think he had a 40 in each hand as well. That being said, I do absolutely love this album, and this is something that I will be listening to year round. So it will get plenty of playtime for me.
Like a tradition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
So you hit it out of the park with that one.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So I listened to it and I was like, I love this. Like I would listen to this. So I knew you would.
There
like.
can't be too many copies of that.
No, there are actually a fair amount of them. It's relatively easy to get. The guy that I actually offered a guy the same price that I got that one for, same condition. He shot me down. I went down the line on eBay a little further. I offered this guy the same price, and he took me up on it. So it's in good shape.
I'm not sure why you'd want to give it up. It was so good.
It was so good. So here's the thing. Just one more record is going to make Christmas at Luke's Sex Shop the #1 Christmas album this year.
Yes, with all 9 of our listeners.
With all 9 of our listeners. So the record that Aaron got me is actually one that Armando has sold. It's was it Christmas, Mr. Hankey's Christmas?
Mr. Hankey's Christmas Classics.
Yeah. Christmas Classics. So this was released in 1999 on Columbia along with Comedy Central Record. The album features songs from the 46th episode. The album also features additional songs that were released the week prior, so on December 1st of 1999. In September of 2008, Russian prosecutors filed a motion to ban the entire series based on complaints circling around this episode alone. The album features 18 tracks, clocking in at 36 minutes and 13 seconds. So these songs are short, which isn't surprising given that they were all featured on one episode of the show. So if you were ever seen an episode of South Park, you know what to expect. It's offensive, it's sensitive, it's gross at times, and lastly, it's amazing. Let's call it for what it is. It probably isn't something you're going to listen to while you're decorating the tree with your kids. This album is probably going to be played around the holidays when you have some adult friends over or you're knocking back some Christmas cheer.
I think Archer would get a kick out of this album.
He would. He probably would, but he's got a funny sense of humor. The first track, Mr. Hankey, the Christmas Poo, is as great as you would think, with a graphic explanation of trying to get poop to come out of your butt in varying consistencies and the problems related to it. You even hear Kyle straining to poop. Number 2, Merry Effing Christmas, is Mr. Garrison telling Muslims and other non-Christian religions to celebrate Jesus' birthday, swearing often and calling other religions heathens. Tracks 3, 5, 19, 11, 14, 15, 17, and 18 are all remakes of Christmas classics, including O Holy Night, Carol Bells, O Tannenbaum, What Child Is This? But this version is called What the Hell Child of This? Hark the Herald Angels Sing, Dreidel, 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 We Three Kings, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. There are some, foundations of actual Christmas music. Some of my favorites are the song number 4, Dead, 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 where it's a soft voice telling you to be grateful for basically everyone you love and everything you have because they're all going to die someday.
That's a little dark.
It was very dark. Carol of Bells, which is Mr. Hankey doing a cappella of the song with other Mr. Hankeys. Christmas Time in Hell, which is probably my favorite track, Lucifer cheering everyone up in hell and celebrating Christmas. It was wonderful. So in conclusion, this album was funny from beginning to end. The production is great. The music is well done and sounds as good as any Christmas classic. If you are sick of the same old traditional Christmas music, this is the thing. This is where you need to go. Would I bought this for myself? Maybe. I do buy myself one or two Christmas albums every year. I'll definitely be keeping this. This will make it out every year. So.
And I bought it last week for myself too. So.
All right. So Aaron, your next album. Armando, have you ever heard of Arrested Development?
Oh my gosh, yes.
So Aaron is getting a copy of Arrested Development, 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days of life.
I'm glad I didn't walk out of the store with this last week because I had it in my hand. It wasn't a music on vinyl pressing, but I had it, and I'm glad I didn't buy it.
That's another thing Armando has gotten me to truly love is music on vinyl pressing.
Oh yeah.
And this will be my first try at the music on vinyl pressing.
I would say, would you agree with this? I think they're better than MoFi.
I don't know because I don't have the equipment. Just sit down and like for example, if I were to have like Supertramp music, MoFi, get regular press on master disc, a Canadian press or whatever it is, I don't have the equipment to test it out like appropriately. So I wouldn't know. All I have to say is this: is that I've never had an album that I bought or ordered for music on vinyl that was bad. It sounds great to me.
Another thing I noticed is whenever I've opened the music on vinyl from you, they are actually flat. Whereas I feel like a lot of times I pull brand new records out of the sleeve right out the gate and they're warped.
Yep.
That's never happened with music on vinyl.
And it's super frustrating.
Yep. And it's super common with some of this recycled material that they get from like the plants. And so like even in the beginning when I was working with distributors, I'd open them up just to experience like the record, even like Mr. Hankey's Christmas classics. I'll only listen to that once. But yeah, oftentimes I'd say like maybe 1 out of 10 records, or maybe 1 out of 20. There's a little bit of warp on some of them.
Yeah, it's been really irritating. Do you think that is partially due to like low quality vinyl?
No, just like recycled material, but also, and we have a great seller who's been collecting all his life. His name is David Bianco, and I'd love it if he could actually join in one of your podcasts, because this man is like a historian when it comes to different presses. In my experience, I only share things that I've learned. I don't pretend to just Google something and all of a sudden like I'm a master. It's something that I experienced and I just want to pass on to people. But I would say that some of the older records just are more hardy and they sound great. And even they might be scratched, for example, like the Rolling Stones or some of like the early UK presses, they sound so good, even though that they're, maybe it's because like the material that they were made out of. They just are hardy, really good sounding records, great presses.
It's also interesting because they're thinner, the OG copies. Or you're saying,
which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think some of the pressings that, the UK pressings or the EU pressings, I think that scares away some people sometimes because, there's some stigma about imports being bad copies or bootleg.
Oh yeah. Often people, and I have to educate the folks as well, is automatically, like in my, like the first year I was doing this with distributors, people would automatically assume that an import was an unofficial. And there's pressing plants all throughout like the world. And so there are legitimate companies out there. Music on Vinyl is one of them.
Yeah, I have a copy of Kiss Love Gun that's blue that I can't find on Discogs that was at our local mom and pop shop in the import section. So I've struggled with that because I don't know if it's official or not. It's like a blue marble.
And I have a Chance the Rapper record from the same store that is on like a purple swirl vinyl, and the size of it is slightly bigger, so I can't actually close the dust cover on my table. So that makes me think something may be off about it. But I mean, it still plays great. It still sounds great.
You have a purple, black, and black too.
I do. Yeah.
And there are a lot of records that I've learned picking up and just test playing them that are great. They're no named labels from like German press records that they are very inexpensive that sound just as good as MoFi's, and people don't know about it.
Yeah,
That's
I've been very impressed with European like pressings and stuff. Actually, probably like the biggest thing that just kind of knocked my peenie in the dirt a little bit was the Aaron's giggling at my use of the word peenie. We're a family show.
That's not the word I expected to hear today. But that's okay.
I bought from you the Jimi Hendrix on mono. Like that blew my mind when I listened to that because I had heard that album before, but I felt like that was the first time I heard that album. I became a mono fan.
And I'm learning about mono and stereo and like the system, the setups, but I don't think I have enough time to be really good at one thing. It's just, hey, whatever I experience, my gift that I add, kind of like you guys have a gift for podcasting, is bringing good people together, donating and sharing stories that I experience throughout the travels.
Well, if you ever want to move to Wisconsin, we can make this a 3-man show.
Oh, oh man, I do have planned to go to Wisconsin. Hopefully next March on my birthday. I believe that it's Kingfish will be in Wisconsin. So maybe I'll
Aaron loves Kingfish.
I do love me some Kingfish.
Oh yeah.
So Aaron's got another thing to add.
So for James's next record to review, I had to order one online. He said, "Get me Fish because it's a band that I don't know anything about, but people talk up a lot." So I got Fish's Joy, and I had to buy it off of their website because I couldn't find it anywhere else. It's coming. It's going to be like space colored vinyl as well.
Oh,
so
I love some colored vinyl.
Absolutely,
love it.
So that'll be coming for you.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, because Armando doesn't know this, but growing up, I was one of those people that if someone told me how great something was, I still have problems with that. I try to avoid it like it's the plague. And Fish was one of those bands where everybody was like, "Fish is so good, Fish is so good." So then there's me with my fingers in my ear, la 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 la.
You're talking about Fish, PHISH, right? Like Lawnmower or something like that. I sold a record that was for $450, and it was like a strong VG or a little grade of a VG plus, and I didn't get it. I was like, I don't care. I'd rather like, no joke, if I didn't know the values of certain things and I had a small band, like a different record, I'd probably go with like the small band, little cheap record over that, because maybe it's like one of those bands that are acquired taste. I don't know, but that's just my experience with them. So
yeah, that's one of those bands that's got some pretty hardcore people.
Yeah, they got a bit of a cult following for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What got me into them was I don't know if you saw the post I had, and then we'll probably start wrapping this up here pretty soon. I had bought Tedeschi Trucks band, Layla Revisited and Other Love Songs. And the main guy from Fish, his name's Trey, I'm not going to butcher his last name today. He is on that album. And I went to our local store. It's going for like $130, $100, which is way more than double what I paid for it. And it's a 3 LP. 1 LP is etched on the back with 2 tracks on it. I get it in, it's bust through the first 2 tracks, and I'm like, man, this 30 LP sounds an awful lot like the second one. Sure enough, same record. I take it back to the store, just defeated, and they're like, oh, we got one in Green Bay, which is like 30 minutes north of us. And he's like, yeah, I'll get it sent here. I have an absolute balls to the wall crazy night at work. I make it there the last 10 minutes of it being open. Same problem. So then he's like, oh, the Oshkosh store, which is 30 minutes to the south, he's like, they have one. So the next day I call him, I'm on the highway, I'm driving down there, and he's like, oh yeah, man, we got all 3 unique LPs. And I'm just like, praise Jesus. I was so happy because this was something I really been digging.
So I've had this happen 3 times now where either a double LP album or a triple LP album that I get has 2 of the same discs in it. And it drives me crazy every time.
Oh, that's insane. I've been learning about that too, working with distributors. Just sold a Tom Petty, and one of the records was missing. I sold it to one of the sellers. Had no idea.
That's not good. All right, man. Well, I think that's about it for the night. So where can people find you?
Find us on Second Chance Records group on Facebook. They could also find me on vintage_Mio. That's my Discog page. And or they could find me through your guys' podcast, because you guys are always.
That'd be the perfect world.
That'd
That's
be
how
ideal
that's
for
how
us.
our buddy Eric found you.
Yes.
But overall, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here. And this has been a blessing. Selling records, bringing good people together in the community, doing good things. And I want to continue doing this. It's about learning and getting better with all things. And I think you guys bring a really good element to our page, and your podcast is awesome. I hope that you guys grow. Have really good experiences.
And we wouldn't mind starting a podcast network and having you with your own show on there.
I'm looking to right.
We can make that happen. We can make that happen. All right. So just a reminder, all you guys and girls, you can always find us on our One More Record podcast Facebook page. There's an email button on that Facebook page where you click that. Takes you right to our One More Record podcast Gmail account. You can send us a message. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you hate. You can tell us how beautiful Armando's voice sounded.
You can also start a Twitter war. We're anxiously waiting for one of those.
Yeah, we are on Twitter. Just One More Record podcast on Twitter. Tell us what you're listening to. And two more things. First of all, make sure you check out G Street Collective. They're the beautiful people who made our logo for us and Second Chance Records. Mike over there is just a beautiful man.
Mike Gallagher is awesome. He's my dude.
Yeah. So
Always remember, guys, there's always more vinyl.
There's always more vinyl.